Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back, and welcome to this review of the newly released late war German infantry and heavy weapons set from Victrix. This is their first foray into World War II or any semi-modern conflict. They've got lots of kits out for Ancients, Dark Ages, Little Medieval, Napoleonics, but this is their first World War II set, so I'm excited to take a look at it with you guys. This set is also, or this review I should say, is sponsored by Victrix because they were kind enough to send this our way to take a look at together. So huge thanks to them for sending it over to us. And if it's not obvious, I've already taken everything out of the packaging, but I should mention, in case you've never dealt with Victrix before, that packaging is not a box, but a bag. And I'll tell you, I've dealt with many dozens of Victrix sets over the years, almost all of them in these bags, and I've never had anything break. Never had any issue in transit. I get lots of stuff shipped from the UK and abroad. And what makes it cool is, like, in a retail setting, you're able to see everything, like all the sprue contents are just sitting there, kind of hanging, as you might imagine. And I'm sure it's lighter from a shipping standpoint too, but if you're at all apprehensive because they come in bags, you shouldn't be. I've never had anything break, not a single time. The top of the packaging here is pretty similar to what we've seen from Victrix, that it's given a breakdown of everything that's included, 44 miniatures, which constitutes, I think, a full platoon of German soldiers, certainly late war. I think it was like 3 rifle squads of 10 men was the doctrine, and then like various support teams that were supposed to go with them, so that makes sense to me. Again, for late war Germans, which is what we're trying to represent here. Artwork on the side is cool. They do this normally, but these almost seem more like zoomed in, which I like. Can show off the faces more. And then on the back here, some renders of some of the poses that you can achieve inside of this set. So it all looks really good. So the contents you're going to be greeted with once you open it, as I have done, are 4 frames of their infantry, 10 models apiece, and then 1 frame of this heavy weapons set. And if you're not familiar with my reviews, first of all, welcome. What we're going to do is I'll isolate one of those infantry sprues and then the heavy weapons sprue. We're going to look at all of the bits in detail, give you breakdowns on some numbers. I'm going to assemble a bunch of these figures. We'll do some scale comparisons with different miniatures in my collection, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So that's where we're headed. I'm going to isolate one of those infantry sprues like I mentioned, but real quick I wanted to talk about this, because this pamphlet that's included is a new edition from Victrix. Just to very briefly kind of walk you through a history of Victrix instruction guides. It used to be that on the back of this packaging, it was almost like an engineering schematic, and I have an accounting background, so that doesn't intimidate me at all, but it wasn't very approachable, and it was just like a listing of parts numbers of all of these bits and which bodies they could be attached to. So it was functional, but not very user-friendly. And then they, more recently, within the last few years anyway, have started producing these, which are, I think, much easier to read, certainly if you're a newer gamer, because this is giving the same information but in visual format, showing you which bodies go with which arms. So this is what I've seen for the last few years in all of my Victrix sets that I've looked at. This, though, is something special because you can see what they've done here, I think just due to the sheer volume of bits that are included here, and because some of them are cross-compatible across these 2 frames. You can see what we're looking at here are overhead shots of the infantry frame and the heavy weapons frame over here. But they've gone a step further in that they're now color coding stuff. And you can see for the most part a lot of which arms go with which bodies are contained, like that they have the rifle arms right next to the body that they're meant to go to. There are some exceptions, like some of these heavy weapons are meant to go with some of the infantry frame weapons, but this, at a glance, gives you a really clear, I think, idea of what is meant to go with what, without even having to introduce any parts numbers. Instead, they're basically saying that there are figure numbers now, and you can see that represented here. And again, in isolation, this might be a little bit confusing, but again, used in conjunction with this color-coded section up front, it's really clear which pieces are going with which miniature. You can see it goes all the way onto the back. So really cool. This is feeling like Lego level ingenuity as far as I'm concerned. So that's really neat to see. So that's a fantastic addition for this set. And then, as I said, I wanted to isolate 1 frame of the infantry and one frame, well, the one frame of heavy weapons here. So let's give a shot of the front and back. We'll start with the infantry frame because the heavy weapons kind of build on the infantry frame. And then from a layout standpoint, you can see it's 10 bodies per frame. And all the numbers I'm going to give you here, I usually discuss per sprue. So you just have to, in this case, multiply by 4 in order to figure out what's going to come in the full set. So what they've done here, they have the figures laid out with the bodies in the center, and the bodies are broken up as 4 that are in standing or firing positions. There are 2 that are in running positions, 2 that are in prone or laying positions, and then 2 that are kneeling. So I think probably the easiest way to do this is just kind of to rotate around the frame. So you can see the 2 running poses over here with their detached legs to make more dynamic looking poses. One of the standing or firing poses. One of the laying poses. Another just kind of running. I gotta tell you, these are beautiful. I mean, some of the best sculpted plastic miniatures I think I've ever seen. And that's no surprise coming from Victrix. They really do make quality figures, but these are something special from a detail standpoint. And you know what, I'm just going to tell you it now. I was probably going to save it for the end of the review. But I think it'll add weight to what I'm about to say, which is that I don't play any World War II conflict games. I don't play bolt action. I did for a time. But the truth is, like, I'm just not that into World War II as a conflict. And I'll say with that bias, I think these are the most beautiful plastic miniatures I've ever seen, at least as they sit on the sprue. Of course, I'm going to put some together, but if you hear me just continually gushing throughout this review about detail and quality, I'm really not kidding. These are stunning. So the folds on the clothing all look fantastic. You can see some of them already have ammo pouches, belts attached, and you might have already spotted scattered around there are additional items that can be attached to these figures, but as they currently sit, a lot of them already have belts and pouches attached to them. So these, I mentioned, are late war, so 1944 to 45 in terms of the uniform and equipment. And yeah, I think they look just incredible. So let's talk heads here for a second. So there's 25 heads per sprue, so there's actually 100 heads in this set, just in the standard infantry frame. And so I'm going to categorize them because I have fun doing that. So there are 6 that are in hat or bare head configurations. So here's like just like a field cap, bare head, another field cap. And if you'll permit me, I'm going to flip it here. There's one that's pretty cool. It's got like a eye patch, and there's one officer's hat over here. There are 8 helmets, just steel helms that have covers on them, and by that I mean this here. So like a weather cover for rain, I presume. And then that's contrasting with just this regular steel helm. So you can see the texture difference here between those with covers and just the regular smooth steel helm here. So as I said, 8 helmets with these covers on them. You can see most of them over there, but if I flip it again, back to the other side, you can see there are 2 more down here that also have covers. And then there are 9 helmets that are just this standard steel pattern. And then a bulk of them are over here. One with glasses or goggles down there. And there's one more in the center up here. And then rounding out the head options, you've got 2 that are meant to go with a particular body, but 2 that are this kind of like specialty one where he's got something around his neck, either bullets, like for an MG42, or binoculars. And that one comes with a officer's cap there. So really, really cool. Lots and lots of variety there to make a lot of different units in the late war German army. Now let's talk about guns, because there are lots and lots of guns on even just this frame in and of itself. Real quick too, I didn't mention it when I had the schematic out, but my experience with Victrix has always been that these, if you stick to these, you're gonna do just fine, no problem whatsoever. But I view these as guidelines, because I have found with every single set I've ever dealt with that there are tons of configurations that Victrix might not necessarily recommend, but that work just fine. And most of it has to do with arm attachment points. Like you can see, some of them have the sleeves already sculpted on versus those that don't, and that's going to be your biggest indicator, other than like weird poses like this one. Sorry to keep bringing that one in, but it has a more zoomed in version of what I'm talking about. So for the most part, a lot of these arms, I can tell you just from looking at them, are going to be totally interchangeable. And it's only going to be like this one here where you can see the sleeves aren't sculpted on. You're going to have a harder time with the arms meant for this guy going onto this one, because this guy has sleeves sculpted on already. But otherwise, if you look at these poses, like you can see, I think these arms would fit on this guy without any issue, and then vice versa. So just keep that in mind as I'm talking about guns. They're designed to go with certain models, but that I don't think limits them necessarily to just those models. So in terms of numbers of firearms here, I'm just going to kind of rotate around the sprue. I think it's the easiest way to do this. There are 20 Kar 98s. This is your standard bolt-action rifle for the German army. And you can see it's a good mix of firing, running, carrying poses. But they all look fantastic. Even little details like this, like having the belt in the hand there. Yeah, really great mix. So again, 20 of them in total, and I kind of zipped by it down at the bottom of the sprue. But there's one down here that has a scope, so you're going to get 4 of those per kit if you want. And I did a pretty thorough review when I was taking notes for this set, and I don't see any G43s for those history buffs that might be looking for one. And those are the ones that had a magazine attachment, different rifle pattern, but all of these appear to be Kar 98s, so just something to be aware of. There are 2 MP40s. You can see there's one down here. And if I zip up here, you can see there's one more. So 2 MP40s. There are 2 STG 34s. So there's one here. And then there's one more up here. And those look really good. Again, from a detail standpoint, they're, I think, fantastic. And being properly held, you see, holding the magazine and not the barrel of the gun. So look fantastic. And then there are actually 2 MG42s. At least I think they're MG42s. They might be 34s. But this is late war, so I presume these are MG42s. So there's one that's sort of in a carrying pose here. And then there's one down here, which is meant to go with this prone guy here, and there's a bipod attachment to go on it, whereas this one has the bipod folded down. So there are then 2 M24 grenades, in hands anyway, because there's a couple of loose ones like this one here. But there's one here, and there's one more hand option down here. And then from there, I mentioned there's a bunch of like ammo pouches. It seems that they're specific to different figures. And again, the schematic will give you a good idea of what goes where. And that I probably would stick to, just because you can see some of them are kind of splayed out in a way that suggests that it's meant to conform to whatever pose the figure is in. So if he's in a laying or a running pose, for example, I think that the equipment is going to be slightly different. So I would probably stick to the schematic on those. But there are also a bunch of arms that are carrying various equipment. Like there's some ammo pouches, like down here, or cases of ammunition for those MGs. So one there. I think there's 4 of them actually for the sprue. One here. And yeah, I think everything just looks really great. I'm excited to put them together. Let's talk about the heavy weapons now, because there's a couple pieces about this that suggest to me that you could pick this up in isolation if you just wanted to have some heavy weapon bits to mix in. But there's certain aspects of this that suggest to me that it's really meant to go in conjunction with the standard infantry frame, and that's both because you can see these black options here, And again, I've mentioned before, these I view mostly as guidelines, but you can see that the black options here suggest that they're meant to go with figure 7. And I can see figure 7 has some sleeves sculpted on there, which probably means that you're going to struggle to put it on to, well, maybe this guy. This almost looks like it's in a very similar pose, so who knows. Anyway, I also say because there are 3 heads on here for 4 bodies, so you're clearly meant to take some of the heads from the main infantry frame and use them over here. And let's talk about the bodies then, since we started to. So 4 bodies on this frame. 3 of them are in kneeling or sitting poses, like this one here, that is meant to go with this tripod-mounted MG. There are otherwise 2 kneeling poses here, and then 1 standing pose, and they all look fantastic, just as good as what we saw in the infantry frame, which is no surprise, and then also some kit pouches that are supposed to go with these figures. And once again, I would recommend you probably stick to what they're recommending with those. But then otherwise, I mentioned there are 3 heads on this frame, and they are up here, 1 each of the regular steel design and the covered design, and then 1 here that's like our radio operator, obviously meant to go with these pieces here and that radio. And then in terms of weapons that are included on this frame, there are 3 Panzerfaust 30s. So you can see there, 2 of them are in, well, one's in like a carrying pose, 1 in a firing pose. Or I guess you could say either are in a firing pose. And then 1 is definitely in a carrying pose here, kind of like over the arm, like you're running with it. There are 2 Kar 98s with rifle-mounted grenades, which look pretty cool. There's 1 Panzerschreck down here with the backpack rockets. There's 1 here that you could add for like a loader, and then the blast shield there going into the front. There's 1 mortar, which you might have seen over here. And then there's some pieces down here that are clearly meant to go with that mortar. And then I had mentioned earlier that there is 1 tripod-mounted MG42. And there you go. From there you can see there's lots of accessory bits in terms of like ancillary equipment. There's 2 arms down here that are meant to be for a medic that look like it might just be the same arm inverted like on either hand. So you can either have 1 medic carrying 2 bags, or more realistically, you can have 2 medics. You got some binoculars here, and then some various other arms that are in like loading or motioning poses. And that's it. So I say that's it, but good lord, what an incredible set of sprues here. So let me cut now. I'm going to assemble a bunch of these figures, and we'll see how they look all built up. Alright, here we go. So I have a number of these figures assembled because I found them so fun. I just kind of kept going, but I'm going to work down the line here. I'll do scale comparisons in a moment, but I do just want to show you just how good these look, guys. I've never seen anything quite like this, even from Victrix, who do really quality work when it comes to their figures. But with this set in particular, as I was working through the diagrams, assembling all of these, and with the exception of 1, I did follow the instructions for all of them, and all the ones I've shown so far just off of the infantry sprue. But I was realizing that Victrix seems to, in the production of and the design of their multi-part models, they actually seem to work backwards. Like they will, maybe in CAD, however it is they design them, they actually start with a pose, like a completed figure, and then maybe come up with a couple of different alternates for that same figure. And that's how they design multi-part models, rather than starting with a torso and then designing arms that could work with that torso. They're actually working backwards, I think, from completed poses. And what that means is that while you have the benefit of lots of variety with multi-part figures, the finished assembled models really do have the quality and kind of natural looking poses of like a monopose figure, like a metal figure. These 2 are from the heavy weapons support, or actually the infantry guy. The body is from the infantry sprue, but the weapons are from the heavy weapons, but that's the way they asked for it to be built. It's a little Panzerschreck there. The piece here, actually, there's another one that they included on the MG they included 2 of these, and I don't see any other reason than just to have a duplicate, because these little fiddly bits, you might lose one. I actually dropped part of one. And anyway, so nice to this little piece here too. As the level for the gun on the tripod, they have 2 of them, even though you only need one. It's a nice little inclusion there. And I didn't find this difficult to assemble at all. Then I would, of course, make a loader for it, but I think these looks are so good. There are some mold lines on a couple of the figures. You can see them like here, all the normal places you would expect on the seam of a figure. And I typically don't do any cleanup work when I'm putting these together, other than just getting any pieces of the sprue off, just so you can see where these mold lines are. And again, this is totally normal. You could even scrape some of it off with a fingernail. But I think these look just so good. This one actually is not designed to go with these arms, but I wanted to put them together just to show you that if you're thoughtful about it and really pay attention to the arm attachment points and the sleeves that are sculpted on the weapon, that you can get a lot of additional poses that they don't necessarily recommend. And I wanted to make just one final note. We're going to do some scale comparisons here in a second. On this color coding system was so easy to use. All I really ended up doing was just working down the sprue. So I snipped off the paratrooper looking guy here, did the red guy, yellow guy, and I just worked down the sprue, had some music going. It was really a delight to do. So really fantastic experience. I hope they continue doing this. I know it's a little bit of extra work, but well worth it, I think. Let's cut now. Let's do some scale comparisons. All right, here we go. So I've got a bunch of figures here on the Lazy Susan. The gray plastic, of course, are the Victrix Germans. The metals that are primed in white are from a whole range of different manufacturers. You can see the names of those manufacturers listed on the bases there. And because I built so many of these, I think I can do these in just the one spin here. There's a handful of figures I didn't include, like Mantic and War Machine, that I didn't think would be super relevant here. It's a shame, actually, that I didn't receive an order yet for some Warlord Games Germans, World War II Germans, that I got specifically to do a scale comparison with this video. And those should be arriving here in the next day or two, but I didn't want to wait to put this review out. So if you are curious about how these scale up specifically with Warlord Games, World War II Germans, I'll have a review up probably by the end of the week, and I'll do specifically scale comparisons with these Victrix figures. The only other thing of note here is that painted figure is a slightly converted British Expeditionary Force miniature from War Games Atlantic. So what's the final verdict? I cannot possibly recommend this kit more highly. This is, without a doubt, the finest multi-core plastic set that I've ever dealt with. I've dealt with hundreds of plastic sets. I've reviewed, I think I'm up to about 50 reviews just on this channel, but hundreds of sets over the years. I don't play bolt action. I don't even particularly care about World War II as a conflict for wargaming. This set is so good, it makes me want to start bolt action. It makes me want to start a German faction. So if you already play bolt action, pick this up. If you don't play Germans, pick this up. If you don't play bolt action, don't care about World War II, pick it up. I can think of tons of uses, from Trench Crusade to alternate 40k armies. There's so much you could do with this. This is so good, so high quality, that it's well worth picking up, just so that you too can experience how fun these are to put together, and I'm sure to paint. So again, huge thanks to Victrix for sending this our way. I'm very excited to see how this range develops. I'm also very excited to see what the quality of this set means for some of the new releases coming out for their medieval range, I think just later this month or the beginning of next month, so stay tuned for that as well. As ever, I appreciate you dropping by for this one. In the meantime, until next time, happy gaming.